Hey guys, it's been a while. For those of you who don't know, my name is Michael Kuhn. Hopefully any day now we'll be able to add doctor in front of that, but I've worked for the past decade in the field of health and nutrition, particularly chronic immune dysregulation. I have degrees in biology, exercise science, clinical nutrition, and as stated, I'm waiting for the final approval, any day now, God willing, on my doctoral thesis, which explicitly explores the means of resolving the diseases of modern civilization. Since a lot of people have been asking for my input regarding this current CV pandemic, and I'm going to be a little bit esoteric with the way I describe it just because of the way the algorithms mark it, but you know what I'm talking about. While I have a lot of thoughts regarding toxic exposure, EMFs, secondary bacterial infections, as well as the hows and the whys of what's going on right now, that's not what we're going to focus on today. Now, there are also a lot of questions about the numbers, whether they're too high, whether they're too low. Are they counting deaths that shouldn't have been counted? Has it spread and underreported? Is the mortality rate much lower than what we've been told? But no, today our primary focus is on what is being reported and on the hotspots. For that purpose, we're going to look at the publicly accepted, quote-unquote, official numbers and point out the glaring inconsistency in the mainstream narrative. Now, these are the numbers reported as of May 1st, which due to my doctoral work and my wedding and my new puppy and Pascha and a whole bunch of other factors caused me to basically postpone this longer than what I've been planning on. But I've been thinking about this for quite some time now. But as I said, the numbers are as of May 1st. Obviously, they're ever changing, but I've looked at some of the more recent numbers, and it still hasn't changed that much. The general patterns are about the same. And honestly, these are real back-of-the-envelope kind of numbers because I'm not doing any complex statistical analyses. I'm a clinician, not a statistician. But to be clear, pattern recognition, particularly when it comes to immune dysregulation, is something that I'm an expert in. So, first things first, there's been a lot of discussion regarding the role of population density and subsequent need for social distancing to combat the pandemic. But a quick glance at the countrywide data shows that this is all over the map. This is often cited for why the New York City and surrounding area is the hardest hit. Now, I wanted to get into the city and town level numbers to really dive into it, but the best available data at this point is on the county and independent city level. I used the New York Times tracker as it was the most user-friendly, but double-checked with the CDC's numbers, which uses usafacts.org, and there really wasn't much difference. Anyway, looking at the data, I have sorted it out here by population density in all the counties reporting more than 10,000 cases. I have my issues with the accuracy of the reported cases, but again, we'll stick with their numbers. On first pass, we can see that the 19 areas with the most official cases, 6 of the top 10 most population dense are squarely within the New York City metro, which seems to check out. Until we plot that out and compare the deaths per population density, which actually doesn't bear out that hypothesis. While the numbers of cases does track slightly with the deaths per population density, obviously as there need to be cases for there to be an increase in deaths, something seemed to be off. You can also see that the mortality rate maintains relatively flat with a couple of jumps here or there. But again, I take that with a grain of salt given my issues with the testing accuracy. So I decided, how about we expand this out and look at the most population dense areas in the country and add them to the equation. Now, obviously, there was some crossover, and rather than remove the lower population density areas like Miami-Dade County, I left them in, although to repeat, that's an area that I would love to have citywide data on. The thing is, when I expanded to include the most population-dense counties and independent cities in the country, the trend got even worse. For example, San Francisco is the second most population-dense county in the country, and both the case rate and the deaths are practically non-existent. Now, that's not to say that the deaths that have occurred there are not a tragedy, but at the time of graphing had about 28 deaths, and by the time of recording had just passed 30. The Baltimore, D.C. metro, including Alexandria and Arlington, Virginia, are also notable, as there were approximately 400 total deaths in all four areas, despite independently occupying 4 out of the top 10 most population-dense areas in the country. Clearly, if population density is the driving factor, which is necessitating the austere lockdown and contact tracing measures, then there should be much more of a market outbreak in these areas. Or are they just simply that much better at social distancing and washing their hands? Given that CV has circumnavigated the globe at this point, that just didn't wash with me. So that got me looking at the comorbidities. The 3 largest factors for CV have been reported to be diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. Let's compare them with the population density. But nope, once again, no real trend. In fact, the city of Baltimore and St. Louis City are among some of the most obese and diabetic in the country, yet their death rate, both as a total and proportion of their population density, is not indicative of a strong relationship. The areas that are hardest hit are nowhere near the most obese or diabetic in the country. Now, to be clear, I am absolutely not suggesting that they aren't related. These diseases of modern civilization are almost certainly leading to chronic systemic inflammation that is making people more vulnerable to CV, and the more deleterious presentations of a hyperreactive immune response in the form of a cytokine storm. What I am saying is just that at the population level, it's not it. There's something else there. If obesity, diabetes, and hypertension are the biggest correlating factors, shouldn't there be more rural areas experiencing a much higher mortality rate? Sure, the denominator will be lower as there are less cases, but the numerator should be higher since they are systematically less healthy as a population, right? But I digress. So that got my noggin jogging, and probably around late March, a light bulb went off in my head. What is something that occurred specifically in New York that would make them uniquely susceptible to compromised lung function? Something that would place them right at the heart of CV ground zero. And then it hit me. Ground zero. Dr. Cameron Kyle Seidel's video where he was describing this as not a regular pneumonia, that the presentation was almost like an altitude sickness, is what got me thinking in that direction. Now, as something of a health detective who is also the relative of a 9/11 first responder victim, I actually couldn't believe it took me this long to piece that potential information together. At that point, back in March, it was something that I floated around with family, friends, colleagues, and mentors, but there wasn't enough data yet to really say that I was onto something or not. Perhaps it just hadn't spread that far to other places. I'll just wait and see. Much of the post 9/11 discussion has been on the first responders, and fair enough. That makes sense, given that they have a higher probability of more overt pathological developments. But what about the subclinical? That is my wheelhouse. The consistent, low-grade, inflammatory insult. The toxic plume that went up on that day undoubtedly caused some long-lasting damage to the people in the surrounding metro, i.e. northeastern New Jersey and southwestern Connecticut, as well as New York proper. Where are more than one-third of the deaths in the country? In that exact region. Now, there have been a lot of deaths in other areas, such as Cook County, Illinois with Chicago, and the reported mortality rate is the highest in Wayne County, Michigan with Detroit. But I believe those are more so the outliers and have another root. As I've said, I have issues with the mortality rates, so there may simply be a wider spread of the CV, which helps to explain those deaths. But because of the objectively greater absolute values in the New York City metro, there have been likely more tests overall, which explains the greater case count. However, while crunching the numbers for this video, I actually came across a paper that was pre-published on April 27th that looked at the very idea of air quality, which was something else I had considered and had found to trend positively with deaths per population density. Their findings concord with mine, although ironically, they excluded the New York City metro as an outlier. They found that long-term elevations of PM 2.5, which is a measurement of air quality quantifying particulate matter in the air, to be positively associated with increase of CV-related deaths. Now, I could be completely off base on this, and there's actually no there. But given what I'm seeing, it definitely appears to be something worth exploring, especially given the insanity that has ensued. It's just something that I wanted in the public record, since I haven't really seen anybody else talking about the potential of 9/11 related toxic plumes resulting in increased susceptibility to CV death. But, like I said in the beginning, I have a lot of thoughts about what is going on right now, many of which I would rather wait to discuss publicly, but feel free to reach out to me if you want to kick around some ideas you have. What I will say, though, is that if everything is exactly how they describe, the measures that have been taken will definitely ensure that there will be a quote-unquote second wave and a subsequent lockdown. The loss of interpersonal contact and regular exercise, sunlight, and fresh air will lead to a host of physiological and psychological stressors, as well as an ill-prepared microbiome, all of which will probably combine to nullify this hypothesis, but definitively lead to further CV infections and the risk of other infectious disease. It is not the right course. So keep that in mind. I likely will have some further videos in terms of what we can do. Maybe I'll actually put my face back on again. But for this one, I wanted for all the numbers to be able to see the graphs. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I have no problem people coming to voir dire the evidence. So, guys, I'll see you in the next one. And yeah, stay safe out there and keep your eyes open.